We must say no!
Are we gonna go? Hell no!
The Vietcong don't mind the snipers. In 1967, the US and South Vietnamese army were being bled dry by an elusive enemy in the jungles, with mines, booby traps and snipers. Hidden well and camouflaged too well in the jungle canopy are the Vietcong, and behind them are the NVA supplying them with weapons, ammo and food stuff. The Vietcong themselves are a trap to harass and occupy the US army until the NVA was ready to fight. To pull and also were to pull in civilian support. With a die-hard attitude, jungle warfare and the civilians as part of a military and political campaign that would be led none other by Ho Chi Minh. By the time the US came, they were skilled and ready with new tactics and new weapons. In a conventional war, it was a conventional war but also a guerrilla war. The Vietcong were meant to be an insult coined by the South, which meant Red Vietnamese. The key strategy was tunnels, and the most famous tunnel in military history was the tunnel complex of Co Chi. It was a major base camp and command center with a combined NVA and LNF base area. As most Americans poured in, they soon started discovering tunnels all over and realized it was underground war in Vietnam. The tunnel was a key to command and control the Vietcong. Officers were based in them to coordinate attacks in the countryside. Like the trenches of World War I, these tunnels had everything to sustain, and they would never have to leave the comfort of the tunnels unless confronted by enemies. But Co Chi was one section of an even bigger tunnel complex. The tunnel rats, which were the first Americans sent down, were basically the first guys only armed with a 1911 pistol and a flashlight. It was a dangerous job because if the Vietcong were down there, they would be cornered like a rat. Also, if there were booby traps, there was no place to run. The tunnels had to be destroyed, of course, or else the Vietcong would use them for future attacks. The secret tunnels ran deep and far to protect thousands of guerrillas, fighters and NVA regulars who hide from the US patrols and bombers. The bases are great, but they still need to feed and arm the troops deep in the Vietnamese jungle. They were carving a trail, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The Viet Minh had to find a way to supply the troops in the south. The trail, mostly going through Laos and Cambodia, they developed the trail to supply and control their allies. In the end, the Ho Chi Minh Trail will take out at least 3 months. Will at least take 3 months and to get across it would take 3 months to get across, and it was over 800 miles in length. So it became a surface highway of sorts, with cargo trucks bumper to bumper. But the Ho Chi Minh Trail was later proven not to be as effective as the US thought. At least a whopping 80% of the NVA supplies came from the sea. The US and South Vietnamese faced an enemy that perfected the most terrifying tactics of war, the booby trap. Two more tricks up their sleeves were booby traps and politics. There was a political officer and a military officer. Both of them held high ranks. The political officer worked as a pep talker, a father, and cared for the men on their knees. The political officer, morale booster, was copied from the Soviets, the inventors of the political officer. He had a bit of military training, but his key job was morale officer and second father to keep up the spirits. But at the end, he was a true brood communist. The Vietnam was a contest of will, making the political officer vital to the Viet Minh and NVA. The Americans were locked in a battle of attrition. The US tried to break the will of the communists by superior firepower and bombing, but the North Vietnamese had a trick of their own, the booby trap. The booby trap was meant to demoralize and slow down the troops. It would only kill at least one or two at a time, so it was a weapon of fear. Anything could have been a trap, from the bamboo to cigarettes on the ground in a jungle. The easiest and most common was the pondu trap, a sharp stick bamboo with human feces smeared all over it. It was to injure and contaminate, making the soldier sick or even die. It laid on a flat piece of wood on a hole, and the sticks where the sticks would be in the hole. When the troops walked on top of the wooden plank, their extra body weight the thin sheet of wood could not hold their body weight, as they would slide down into the hole and get pungied. Another trick, which was tying a grenade to a vine with a hook, and the hook would latch onto a piece of clothing or skin, and as the pin tugged, the grenade would explode in your face or behind you. Another booby trap, which was a relic of sorts, was a bouncing Betty, a mine which had a three-prong pin on it, which stepped on could launch at least 4 or 5 feet into the air. It was a key, and it was also key to news enemies' weapons against them, like cigarette packs to make fake cigarette bombs, or beer cans to have poison in them. They even took up claymores on exploded bombs, even grenades that were left behind. So the traps were mainly to wound the Americans, mostly because it took at least 4 or 5 guys to take care of him, and the Huey would take him out. Easy to make and handy, the booby traps were their greatest weapon. The Vietcong also did assassinate people in power and authority, which was a terrorist act to demoralize and put fear into the South Vietnamese. Finally, the Vietcong used the American people against the American army. With the upcoming peace movement, the Vietnamese propagandized and actually told the truth of some horrors of war that were happening to them, as the Americans rallied to get American troops out of Vietnam. They also had Hanoi Hannah, which was a key propaganda figure, and a lot of communist propaganda was to boot in their tactics and strategies. But that is for next week. So I hope you guys enjoyed. This is gonna sound a bit stitched together, because it is. I hope you enjoyed. So we're going to talk about propaganda next week. Then we're going to do air, land and sea, American heroes, horrors of war. We might do heroes and generals, and then we'll finish off with conclusions. So I hope you like this one. It was a bit of a rush, but it was still a not too bad rush. Hope you enjoyed, and see you next week, and learn something.